Oh.
Fun. It's called Holland, where I live.
Would be for a 10-month cycle.
I know.
But he's doing good.
It's like right in between there. Now up until World War I. All right. All of the islands.
I
Realize, right.
It's all online.
got some before I realized that.
On our line. Nice.
Oh, wow. Familiar from what I bet that is incredible.
It is pretty awesome. I have to fly in
Is that your new retirement?
Stockholm, and then we take
We're gonna get started.
like a 2-hour drive and then a ferry and then an hour drive. It's just insane.
You definitely get out of the.
I gotta have
It's coming out of. On the drug.
Hi, how are you?
Yep.
And I remember thinking, it looks just like a great place to vacation,
Yep, yep.
but I haven't.
Yeah, my, been chilled a little. We were first dating. Now maybe we're gonna see him in the book. That is our little place.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I am really jealous now. I can't wait to, post some pictures of that on Facebook.
I will.
Let me go there.
They have been the last year or so. We now, I think kids are a little older. We,
Right, that's funny.
at least for
We
3
have to
weeks.
sort of deprive them of modern convenience. Yes. I can see that.
All right, let's get started. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you all. Oh, all right. Got coffee. I think I have a sensitivity to caffeine lately. So if I start jumping up, dancing in the middle right there, just tell me to stop drinking coffee. No, I don't know what's going on. All right, well, again, good afternoon. We're gonna start the formal proceedings now. So welcome everyone again to the Maryland Commission on Climate Change. In today's meeting, we're going to start, as we always do, with roll call and housekeeping information that Chris is going to provide for us. In fact, this time, are we allowing for the public comments in the beginning or at the end? At the end. Okay, so in today's meeting, we're going to also invite Dr. Rachel Lamb. She's the Assistant Secretary here at MDE and the Climate Advisor. She's going to provide, I've asked her to provide an update on our agency's circular economy efforts. I don't know if you all have heard, but in Maryland, we have been doing a lot. And I won't get into it. I was about to get excited, but we'll talk about the circular economy, all the things that we've been doing. We're going to highlight also the international memorandums of understanding that we are advancing for environmental and climate. We're going to also talk a little bit about how those MOUs are supporting our project financing. If you all recall, we've been talking about this for a while, where we know we do not have a lot of money funding for the climate projects and all the things we want to get done. And so we've been thinking about how do we finance the climate goals and all the things. So we're going to have a little bit, a short conversation, well, not that short, but kind of short conversation about private partnerships and what we're thinking about in that area. And we're going to also hear from my co-chair, Kim Coble. So happy you're here. And Commissioner Michael Powell, who's right in person. Thank you for coming in person. I know we're going to hear from you all, as we always do, the highlights from the legislative session. Actually, that's like what I'm looking forward to the most. I always love you all's presentation, so I can't wait. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe short.
I was gonna this time. Usually you all, gosh, it's so good. All right, well, I can't wait to hear it. I hope we're gonna also have a chance this year to talk about this year's procedure for both commissioners and the working groups to submit the recommendations for consideration to include in our commission annual report. And again, we've already talked, but the public comments, we're gonna be doing that at the end. Okay. So Chris, why don't you get started. Take us through roll call and also the February meeting minutes, and let's get started.
Excellent. Thank you. Afternoon, everyone. Chris Hoagland providing staff support for the commission. Why don't we start with roll call in the room? We'll go around the table, and then online I'll call names that I see, starting with Dr. Gilden, please.
Robin Gilden, the University of Maryland School of Nursing, the public health representative.
Fernando Miralles Wilhelm from UMSIS.
Kevin Addix from Department of Agriculture.
Kim Pezzer here for Brooke Lehrman. Jennifer Mizrahi for philanthropy.
Kim Coble. Environmental Community. Maryland LCV.
Know who I am. Serena McElwain, Secretary of Environment in Maryland.
Brian McGalley, representing the business community, Constellation.
Ron Speaks Backman, Maryland Energy Administration.
Michael Powell, another representative of the business community.
David Smitic, one of the representatives for the NGO community.
Excellent. Thank you, commissioners. So in the interest of time, I'll read off the commissioners I can see who have logged in online. Welcome, Delegate Stein. Thank you for joining.
Sure.
See our People's Council, David Lapp. I see Jackie. Are you here on behalf of Secretary Kurtz?
Sure am. Thank you.
Great. Good to see you. I see Mike Hinson. Are you here on behalf of Secretary Strickland?
I am. Good afternoon.
Excellent. Morgan, are you here for MDOT?
I am, and Darren should be in person shortly.
Great. Thank you for joining on behalf of Secretary Thompson. Secretary Flora, welcome.
Hello.
Dr. Dickerson.
Good afternoon.
Are there any commissioners or commissioners representatives who I missed on the online roll call?
Good afternoon. I'm Katie Hauk, representing Commissioner Barve from the Maryland Public Service Commission.
Thank you, Katie, for joining.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Herger from the Critical Area Commission for Eric Fisher.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, thank you all for joining. That is
Jamie DeMarco, member of the NGO community.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you all for joining. We can now move to approving, considering the minutes from our last meeting included in your package and up on the screen now. Coming up on the screen now are the minutes from our February 2nd meeting. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, I suggest we entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So moved.
Second.
And a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Are any opposed? Do we have any abstentions? Okay, thank you all. The minutes from February 2nd are approved. As the secretary mentioned, as the chair mentioned, we will be taking public comment at the end, as this is not a decision-making meeting. So any members of the public who would like to offer a comment who are online, please put your name in the chat and we'll add you to the list, and then we'll follow up when we reach that point in the agenda. I don't believe I see any members of the public in the room, but if that changes, we'll check on them as well. So thank you, Chair. We're ready to proceed with the agenda.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. All right. So now we're going to move on to our first presentation of the day. In our last meeting, as I said earlier, the last meeting we had in February, we did talk about the commission's priorities for this year. One of our key priorities is climate finance. And I think it's time for us to take that conversation to the next level. So hopefully this will be a very enlightening conversation, which will hopefully lead to more conversations about climate financing. So now we're going to hear from Dr. Rachel Lamb on circular economy efforts with the European Union. And also, as I said earlier, we're going to highlight the MOUs that we are working on that are actually helping us move forward with project financing. So I think you're going to learn, really find that conversation interesting. We're going to learn from markets farther along in their decarbonization efforts and promote climate resilience as well. So Rachel, if you're ready, why don't we go ahead and get started?
All right, thank you so much, Secretary, and good afternoon to the Commission. I'd like to spend a few minutes working through some of the key outcomes from the work that we've been building here for the last 3+ years, and really highlight some of the potential ways that this work can be leveraged in the Commission's priorities for this year. So first, I just want to emphasize that international engagement on climate is more important than ever before. Of course, we understand the global relevance because climate change it inherently involves all of us to make progress. But in the wake of a lack of federal ambition and some of the headwaves that we've been experiencing, many other subnational governments and national governments around the world are asking what U.S. states, regions, and cities are doing to make progress. And in particular, our global partners, including those governments as well as other corporates, NGOs, and philanthropies, are increasingly looking for credible local partners to really get things done to support climate implementation. And we know, just looking at examples, not just from here across the US, but also globally, that states that can really work to connect all the different levers, connect policy, connect capital, and partnerships, really move faster. And so we've been really asking, what can we do to leverage ongoing global engagement to accelerate in-state delivery of core climate outcomes? So the Moore-Miller administration, under the work of their International Affairs Subcabinet, developed a 5-year strategic plan that was released in 2023. And among its goals is one focusing on leading the nation in combating climate change, addressing damage to the environment, and supporting climate change resilient communities with a whole of government approach. Many different agencies participate on the International Affairs Subcabinet, and Secretary McElwain helps lead implementation of that climate goal in concert, again, with many of our partners. When we look at that strategy and we think about our climate commitments, we're looking to advance at least 3 core outcomes for Maryland. One, we want to work to accelerate implementation. We want to look at what's happening globally and figure out how to better deploy proven policies and technologies faster here at home. A second thing we want to do is better position ourselves to attract investment. And of course, that means investment of local governments, local partners, but it also means appealing to a broader national and international audience. And it's often in the course of benchmarking and looking at ideas of where it works elsewhere that we can better strengthen and improve the financing models that we can offer here at home. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is to look at those best practices and figure out what it takes to bring them here at home. So one of the elements of this work has been really showing up and leading our engagement diplomatically across a range of major climate conversations. So of course, that participation has included some of the major annual convenings of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So under the current federal administration, the US has moved to withdraw as a member from not just the Paris Climate Agreement, but the underlying convention that supports that. However, that has opened up a door for subnational governments, especially states in the US, to be at the table, to champion the role that we play, the fact that we're closer to communities, closer to implementation, and actually help encourage many of the other governments around the world who think nothing is actually happening here at home to know that they have partners here that are willing to work with them. The Secretary has had an opportunity to join not only in those annual COPs, but last year was invited to participate in what they call the pre-COP or pre-negotiation meetings in Bonn, Germany. And she was the highest ranking US official in the room, elevating the importance of Maryland's voice in these conversations. And again, emphasizing the value that states can play in these broader conversations. You'd also be interested to know that there's a proliferation of climate weeks. I know we just had a DC Climate Week closer to home a couple of weeks ago. But one of the really interesting things about participating in New York Climate Week, for example, is that it often happens at the same time as the UN General Assembly. So it gives a really great opportunity to engage with premiers, governors, ministers from many other governments across the world, and talk about, again, some of that benchmarking and discussion of what's working or not. And sometimes that lets for a lane of opportunity, again, for more bilateral exchanges below the national level. One of the other increasing opportunities we've had is around London Climate Week, which similarly tries to advance those conversations, not just with national partners, but global businesses and investors as well. And here you can see the governor was one of the keynote headliners at a recent New York Climate Week event. So diplomacy is really helpful for championing Maryland and Maryland's leadership, but we know it's not just about diplomacy, it's again about execution. Three of the things that I think are really important to making this happen is the ones that you can see here on the screen. So on the left, you can see the real importance of developing targeted partnerships. And that's for us identifying other climate leading states and institutions that are like-minded, but also can help push us to do more. Maryland is a proud member of the U.S. Climate Alliance. I'm at meetings with them today. And we're also a member of the Under 2 Coalition, which is the largest global coalition of governments that are trying to advance climate goals in line with the Paris Climate Agreement. We also participate in discussions facilitated by the Americas All In Coalition. And I would be remiss if I didn't emphasize the value that UMD's Center for Global Sustainability has played in helping us through their actual international affairs program and making connections with partners around the world. So it's not just Maryland by itself, it's Maryland doing this work in concert with others. And that's where we can really leverage our collective voice in this really challenging time. We also need to be very strategic in our focus. We are always thinking about the high priority sectors that we've identified in Maryland's climate plan, where we know we need to make the greatest emissions reductions and really focus on joining those conversations that we can think can really make a difference. And that's what leads me to the last one. We're really trying to identify those actions that, whether they be on the technology front, policy best practicing, or even other kind of financial mechanisms that are easier for us to build on, take off the shelf, learn from what worked and what didn't work to really deliver. So all of that effort over the last few years has led to some really valuable results. Here's just a snapshot of some of the partnerships that we've built over that time frame. And of course, it's not just the Department of Environment, but it's us doing it with the Secretary of State's office, with Department of Transportation, Commerce, DNR, others. And we've really been able to develop both bilateral relationships and to work with broad partners, for example, like the European Union. Last fall, we, for example, co-hosted the inaugural Maryland EU Circular Economy Forum that was headlined by the EU ambassador to the United States and the governor, talking about the importance of thinking critically about how we can better manage waste streams, think about material recovery, build project pipelines for materials management. And just recently, the secretary was invited to go to a second annual convening where, again, the governor and Maryland's leadership was highlighted as being on the forefront. I'll come back to the circular economy, I think, as a leading frame moving forward. But you can see that these partnerships range both from advancing partnerships on electric vehicles and clean energy through our connections with Quebec, all the way to thinking about nature-based solutions and how we can advance more community-based climate resilience in France. I do want to highlight that recently when we were at the COP meetings back in Brazil, we had the opportunity as an agency to sign a new MOU with Rio de Janeiro focused on how to exchange best practices around Chesapeake Bay restoration. This was a partnership that UMCES had played a really important role in providing technical exchange and support for. And we were just really proud to renew that agreement and think about that next generation of exchange at a not just an interagency level, an interstate, regional level, which we know is important, but how that can affect restoration work globally. So I mentioned that circular economy, although not a new topic in any way, is emerging as a really important central topic for connecting economic development and ongoing climate commitments. So if you think about circular economy, it's sort of like this visual here on the right, where you're looking at all along every part and all along the supply chain to figure out how you can take materials, use lower carbon materials, reuse materials. And then when you get to the end of whatever that process is, instead of thinking about it as waste that you dispose of, you give it a new life, a second life, third life, to keep taking waste and turn it into value. We are one of the leading states in the nation, among some others, thinking about extended producer responsibility laws, for example, on paper and plastics, and thinking about how we work with our local governments to support diversion. We're also interested in trying to better target high impact material streams. I know the Commission in one of its working groups in the last couple of years really looked at the value of solar panel recycling, for example, and how to not just think of end of life for those materials, but the fact that in a world where there's a lot of international security questions and concerns, being able to recover critical minerals from those resources and build the next generation of solar panels with them is actually a really valuable and important conversation. And we want to be sort of on the leading edge of thinking about where the business opportunities might be. And those kinds of clean energy solutions are really important for next generation progress on our climate goals. And we know ultimately that if we can identify some of these lanes for additional action, we can create more bankable projects. And what I mean by that is ones that have a clear return on investment and can attract additional investment in local infrastructure. Of course, importantly, we can reduce emissions, especially in the waste sector and even in the production of those materials. And I think, again, it gives a really great example of how to further align climate action and economic growth. And so this is something that we're really working hard on at MDE and would love to continue to engage the Commission and your working groups on policy solutions in this space. And then, again, just at a final highline here, we obviously have a lot of existing important funding streams that are trying to enable ongoing climate progress. We also have to think about how we can better scale financial tools that may get us to a different scale of implementation than existing funding can do alone. So what we need to do internally is really think about strategic alignment. We've been working closely with the Department of Budget and Management and the Comptroller's Office to better track our greenhouse gas and climate spending, think about how those how that spending can inform our budgeting, and to be more clear and transparent in how we're tracking that funding moving forward. We're really working to identify project pipelines that could benefit from more investment, and that's being done in conversation, of course, with the green banks and other institutions. And one of the things we've been learning a lot recently in our conversations with international partners is sometimes how confusing the landscape of metrics and reporting can be, and it's hard to compare projects or understand what the outcomes are. And so really helping support a whole of government approach to standardize metrics and performance reporting, it can actually help sell the outcomes more clearly externally to Maryland. So we're doing a lot of that. I'll just note one of the things that the things that we've engaged most recently with some contractors through the U.S. Climate Alliance is mapping assessment to understand where we have existing assets and gaps in our climate financing context, with the goal of leveraging that analysis to really identify some of those key recommendations for partnerships and next steps that could help us break through maybe existing bottlenecks. And again, that could be related to aggregating infrastructure and really better leveraging what public funding we have to crowd in private investment. So we're trying to get very specific, very practical, and we know there's a whole lot we could do. Let's start with some specific spaces where we know we have some momentum and we can really drive confidence in the market. The last thing I'll say quickly is, this is a lot of the work that the administration is leading, but the Climate Commission also has a really important role, and your voice is really important internationally as well. Just recently, the Climate Commission joined as an associate member of the ICCN, which is the International Climate Councils Network. This is a growing network primarily to date in national climate commissions or councils, and Maryland is one of several new subnational councils that have been joined this network. And part of the benefits of this is just enabling global benchmarking of different governance and different policy best practices, learning from others who are navigating challenging political contexts, improving, the accountability and decision-making processes, and just figuring out how to build capacity. As the staff support for the Maryland Commission on Climate Change, MDE is also trying to support the Commission's participation in this network, but we'd really love to open up engagement with the working groups and your members so that you can benefit from this kind of exchange to help you in your work. So with that, I'll close it out. If you have any questions after this, please feel free to email me or follow up offline. Turn it back to you, Secretary.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. As you all can see, we've been doing a lot on behalf of Maryland. I think we've really positioned Maryland in a good way internationally. We have a lot of people understanding that we're trying to be creative. A lot of countries, we're trying to be creative when we think about climate financing. As I've said before, this is something that we can't do alone. Can't be just Maryland. We have to form those private partnerships, and that's something that I've been trying to do really since I started. And I think we're really making some good headways right now. But I'm really curious also to hear, do we have some time to talk? Maybe 15, 10 minutes to talk about, after hearing all of the things that we're doing, do you all have any ideas, any reactions, things that we need to think about going forward? I did ask for a list of projects from my team, and I have that list of projects, but for me, I was looking for those projects just so in my head, I could think about what are some of these big projects that we're trying to get funding for? So we can kind of set ourselves up for those conversations. And we do have a list of projects, which I don't have in front of me, but as a basis to just think about. And also like things like BEPS. When we think about BEPS, that's another area in which financing is something that I'm thinking about, because I know that buildings have to comply with BEPS, but what about the investment that we need to do from Maryland to help move the needle in getting those buildings upgraded? And so all those kinds of climate related projects are, again, something that I've been thinking about, and I know that everyone in this room, you've been thinking about it too, because it is important. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any conversations, any thoughts that you have on what we're doing. Sure.
Thank you.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to offer an update. Rachel, thanks a lot for the presentation. Very, very thorough. So this collaboration that UMCES has had with the state of Rio in Brazil resulted in a first report card, as we do for the Chesapeake Bay, for Guanabara Bay in Rio de Janeiro in year 2011, 2012. After several years, and certainly due to the recent trips and recent connections, the state of Rio asked us to submit a proposal to revamp the report card that was done for them, more than 10 years ago. And I was just told that proposal has been accepted. So we're going to be working on an update to the state of Rio, the Guanabara Bay report card, and the The innovative aspect this time around is that our report card with Chesapeake Bay has been evolving from being a report card that says the Bay is C+, B-, D, whatever, to something that identifies and prioritizes actions and investments to be made in specific aspects of the Bay restoration. The state of Rio loved this approach, and they want to implement a similar action-oriented report card this time around. So I look forward to engaging in that project with the state of Rio and reporting back here the outcomes of that. And I want to thank the secretary for, so I know you were there and you talked to, and so I know that part of the approval of this proposal was due to that intervention. So we really thank you.
That's great. That's great to hear. I appreciate that. Happy to see it's moving along so much.
It's Brazilian speed, right?
Yes.
But,
Thank you for that.
I would be happy to help if there's interest to connect what we're doing with the climate companies in Israel. Not a lot of people realize this, but their national economic strategy is largely along climate tech. They have more than 800 companies working on climate technologies. They subsidize and incubate these companies. They have incredible innovations, and some of them, because they're tired of being attacked by rockets, are looking to move some of their development to the United States. The state of Maryland has a special relationship with this, and we also have federal funding through BIRD for technology transfers. There's been a lot of this in biotech that's already happening. More than 50 Israeli companies have come largely to Montgomery County in the biotech space. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for new growing solutions to happen. These solutions are being done in partnership with something called the Abraham Accord, which is the Gulf nations that are working in partnership. So it's Saudi Arabia, it's Bahrain, it's UAE, and others. And I'd be happy to make some of those introductions.
Yeah, that would be great. So let's talk afterwards. I didn't know about those relationships. Okay, thank you for that.
Be quick, really appreciate the presentation. I love that we are getting onto the global stage even more forcefully on this stuff and sharing our learnings and how Maryland is showing up while the U.S. federally is stepping back on these pieces. I'll just throw out similar to Jennifer, one recommendation to potentially look into more active participation in is the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, which is a sub-program of the United Nations Environment Program. They have a series of working groups. I used to be involved and founded one on clean heat, which I think would be really interesting for some of the folks that are working on the clean heat rules or the BEPS program. They have national and subnational participation from governments, industry associations, and researchers, and lots of folks looking at how are we advancing both from a policy perspective, but also from a financing and a market perspective, clean heat technologies globally. And so since that is a focus for the state here, I think that could be an interesting opportunity for folks to look into. Happy to make connections as well. But I think that it's a good opportunity. The more we can learn from different folks across the globe on these issues. So I think it's great. Good work. Let us know how it keeps going.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Kim, co-chair.
Madam Secretary and Rachel, thank you very much. A great presentation and actually really inspiring work. Big global question and a specific question. So let me start with the specific. And I don't know if it's who to answer this, but Rachel, you were talking about a lot of financing mechanisms that you'd been learning about and experiencing from other countries. How much of their solutions are funded by the government in those areas, and how much is more of a public-private partnership model?
I'll try to answer that, and then Rachel, you can help me out. So I think, we had a conversation yesterday with Luxembourg Stock Exchange, and their funding is all private. Because your question is it any federal or government? I'm correct on that, right, Rachel? That was all private investment funding, correct?
Yeah, they're trying to crowd in private investment, sometimes a bit of public monies is involved, like in a bond, a bond, municipal bond or something like that, you have some public monies there, but a lot of it is about shepherding and additional private investment.
Right, and so the conversation we had just yesterday was like, how does this work? Like, we don't know, but how does it work? How do we get or partner with private partnerships, private companies, international companies who want to do business in Maryland, who want to invest like green bonds and put money up so we can get more done? We're just exploring those conversations, but yes, it is like they're the ones who have access to investors who want to put their funding on green projects only. And so I don't know how it will play out because of the mechanisms that we have in place, like accepting and taking and combining. I don't know. That's just a whole conversation, but we are starting those conversations, and
That's awesome.
I'm hoping to get more information. And that's why I think it's important to have the conversations with you all, so we can brainstorm on these things together.
Yeah.
So.
And then my global question for one or both of you is that as you've done this work, I guess over the last couple of years with the international community, what has been the most surprising thing that you've seen that rest of the world be engaging in, or some that we're not?
It's a good question. Surprising thing. Rachel, wow, you're smiling. It sounds, I think you have the answer right in your head.
Well, I thought of two things. One thing, maybe a little adjacent to what you asked him, but one thing I'm always surprised at, but I shouldn't be, is how shocked other countries are that we show up in those spaces because they think nothing is happening in the US on climate. We all in this room can understand that sometimes with the federal, national, narratives and challenges, that yes, the rest of the world is concerned about what the US is doing, but how genuinely hopeful they are when they see subnational governments and states and cities showing up and showing that we are still doing the work. So I find that really encouraging, even if sometimes I realize that, a lot of other governments don't realize how much power states have. But I was also thinking, Secretary, we always are admiring others' electric vehicle transitions, and just sometimes the sheer amount of progress that we can see in places like Quebec or in the Nordic countries, or even China, honestly. And so just thinking about what is it that the Secretary always challenges us to think about, what is it that they did? How did they get it done? How could that translate back to our context? And so sometimes it doesn't perfectly translate, but I think that inspires us to say these transitions are possible. What does it take for us to get them done?
Yeah, and like with China, you mentioned their governance is different. So it's hard to compare. When you have a governance structure that's today, questions asked. That's not how we do things in the United States.
Well, sometimes.
That's a good point. But yeah, that is most alarming, as just all the progress that's being made regarding EVs. Yeah, and we're trying to do more in Maryland, knowing that we don't have a whole lot of, funding for the EVs. We got regulations that are no longer. And so we're trying to be innovative as much as we can to move that needle forward. So it's just so much, as we know here, that we have to do to keep that momentum going. You had another question.
So I'm not an expert on capital budgets and how it works in Maryland, but at the agency summit, which your agency sponsored here recently, I was incredibly impressed with David St. James' presentation on what the Government Services Agency is doing, that when they come to end of life on heating systems, they're, transferring to clean energy and that sort of thing. I mean, with over 20 million square feet of buildings and all the capacity that they have. I'm wondering if some of the potential cost savings of the transitions of our own infrastructure could be packaged into a financial package for an outside funder to come in with a bond to pay for our transitions that we're doing in the state. I don't know how that would work, but it seems with that much work that needs to get done, that's a lot of capital to make that transition happen.
Okay, thank you. That's, take a note of that. It's interesting. Thank you. We'll follow up. Anyone else in the room or online? Anyone in the room first, and then we'll go online? Okay. Anyone online? Hands up, anyone?
Maybe an additional comment that it's not terribly related to the content, but it's more about how do we, as a state, make more noise about what we're doing? How do we market this? Because that marketing will also return in opportunities.
Yep. Right.
So it's great that we're telling ourselves, and that's fantastic. I mean, I've learned a lot today, but I want those suckers in California, to hear about what we're doing, right? And Texas and everybody else, right? So.
Yeah. So one way we're making, or I've been trying to advance Maryland to, hey, we're doing all of these things, is at US Climate Week, right? I'm always invited on behalf of Maryland.
Right.
So I show up, but I'm Miss Maryland. And I'm always invited to be on panels. Like if it's all week, I'm on 12, 13 panels, literally just talking about all the things that we're doing. And they're states, across the United States, right? You have all the environmental people there. So I'm showing up, I'm speaking, I'm not begging, but also asking, can we benchmark? What are you all doing? How are you getting your financing? So I'm kind of marketing everywhere I go when I show up. So
wonderful.
Thank you for saying that. And of course, internationally, like Rachel said, when we do show up, it's always a pause like, wow, Maryland is everywhere. You all care. You're doing what? And I always tell them about our climate goals. They're aggressive, the most aggressive, but we have to get there. And that's why we're having those conversations. So thank you for that. That's important.
Dr. Dickerson's stand.
Okay.
Online.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to point out that indeed our European colleagues are pleased to see that the individual states, some of which are as big as some European countries, are taking action, and they're very happy to share science and technology with us on how to achieve our emissions goals, how to evaluate the benefits, the co-benefits especially. And I have colleagues at the Max Planck Institute in Mainz that work on air chemistry, and they have done some very clever policy things, such as pointing out that if you build a new coal-fired power plant, that will be stranded assets. That's an expression I learned in these climate change commission meetings. So good job, Rachel.
Very nice. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else, or we're done?
We should probably keep moving.
Yeah, we're going to keep moving. Thank you all. We'll have more conversations about climate financing going forward. So I think next is Co-Chair Kim Coble and Michael, your presentation on the legislative session. Is that right?
Okay, you want to pull up? You got the slide. I laughed a bit when you said the highlights of this session. I'm not sure high is the term I would use for this session.
Okay.
And I think that the key word, and you hear it everywhere on all political levels now of this session, was affordability. And I think that to the extent that climate bills were discussed, particularly in the energy field, it had more to do with debates over affordability than greenhouse gases. It was sort of, that was clearly a part of it, but when you get to the energy bills, the first question was, what was going to be the impact on rates? Was it going to, you saw that on Empower, where people were arguing about whether the Empower programs would lower rates or whether it would increase rates, various views. So I think that dominated a lot of the conversation this year. And we can go through it. Kim, did you want to make some introductory remarks before? We can go through the particular proposals. You want to go to the next slide? I'm gonna go through, we're gonna go through what of the particular recommendations there was action on, and then summarize the legislation that passed and the legislation that failed. The next slide. And Kim, interrupt me at this point, right?
Oh, I will.
I count on it. These are the particular recommendations where there was some action. And of course, a lot of recommendations, there was no action at all. When I say action, there was a bill put in. And much of this was through, or a good portion of this was through HB 1532, which was the Relief Act. That was the big energy bill. I'm not going to go through, we're going to go through some of the provisions that were in 1532. That bill was 242 pages long. So we're obviously not going to try to summarize everything that's in that bill. I do have a bulletin on my webpage if somebody wants more detail, but we'll talk about some of those. On the category of some progress, it did provide money from CEF for heat pumps, but there were transfers of about $100 million to general revenue funds. So it's out of the CEF fund and into general revenues. There was some money used for higher education construction projects that were sustainability portions, and we have residential customer rebates. So all in all, I would call this as some progress. There was some money devoted to heat pump conversion, but more money was taken out. But I think you want to add, Kim, on.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we all know that the funding for these programs is the juggernaut. And if we're talking about new funding sources, there was no progress because none of this is new. What the General Assembly and the administration did was got pretty creative with the CEF funding. And we lost some of it to general fund allocation, as Mike has indicated, but through, some hard work, there was an additional 100 million put back in. And that's where the 72 from the heat pumps comes in and the 23 for MCEC programs. And so that was good. So the CEF funds going towards climate and clean energy was north of 400 million, and which exceeds what was in last year's budget. So, yay.
I appreciate the way you just said, because I will say also that CEF got more funding than any other year. We're trying to figure out how we're going to spend all of this in a way that is consistent what the CEF funding is for. And so while yes, there were some challenges that we saw, we're also looking at an auction for grid scale clean energy, tier 1 plus energy storage, which is going to help our issue of supply and demand imbalance, which will help affordability. And it makes clean energy part of the solution for affordability rather than pitting it against each other. And so I just have to say, yes, yay and yay.
Yeah.
There was some real progress made, considering what we walked into at the beginning of the year.
I think a good way to summarize, for those of you who are not familiar with, the CEF fund was set up originally for greenhouse gas purposes, either to encourage renewable energy or energy efficiency projects. There was a proposal to move even more out of it. And I think what occurred was that a lot of it was put back in. So it's what do you compare it to? You compare it to how much money was originally there for those kind of purposes. There was a reduction. If you compare it to what was proposed, it was a victory. It's a question of relative perspective, I think.
And I've worked from across such a broad spectrum of Maryland interests. I felt like I really appreciated working with you on that and working with many of you on the outcome of that, is we had to figure out how to answer more than one question.
Right. And I do want to give I think this is in the presentation later on, but a definite thanks to Delegate Stein, who introduced a bill to secure at least 365 million a year in perpetuity. We worked with Delegate Stein on this bill and knew it was going to be a bit of an uphill, but the bill didn't pass, but what it did is to change a bit of the conversation about long-term, none of this work is an annual thing. And so I think there was some great education around the C Fund, what it can do, how it can be used. And also to Kelly's point, I mean, how do we spend it? The worst thing that can happen is to have all this money sitting. So, I felt that was a non-financial benefit to the whole conversation. And thank you, Delegate Stein, again, for your leadership.
Yes, his hand.
The Delegate Stein's hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to echo Kim's point that I think that even though my legislation didn't pass, it certainly advanced the discussion and education about the importance of C funding. So hopefully, there is a significant amount that was approved this year in the budget, including the $72 million for heat pumps, and hopefully we'll continue to have, significant C funding for climate, clean energy programs moving forward. And I don't know if this is in other slides that are coming up, but HB 1532, in addition to the items that were mentioned already, also had some other provisions that are climate friendly, requiring the PSC to approve a successor net energy metering program, a green energy program for nonprofits, streamlining solar permitting, improving balcony or portable solar, and a couple other things. So it did, while the big parts of the bill were focused on some of the items that were discussed, there were some other components that are helpful. Thanks.
That's a good point. We do have a slide coming up. I might ask Dana if you can add to it if I leave anything out about the other provisions of 1532. But I will point out, before we go to the next item, that the state is facing a significant budget gap again next year.
Bigger.
And the wholesale prices out of PJM for this summer are higher than they were last year. So there's every reason to think that we will have the same problem with the rates and budget next year that we had.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. The next item we have is on, this was something that was a commission recommendation to do something about EV charging at multifamily buildings. There already was a law passed in prior years that had made it impossible for HOAs to restrict or make it difficult for HOAs to restrict charging at parking places that were individually titled to the owner of a unit. What was passed this year was to also limit their ability to object to charging on common spaces. When you have an apartment complex or condo association where there are common spaces shared and someone wants to put an HOA, wants to put an EV charging equipment on it. That is something we were seeing a lot of. A lot of HOAs were simply objecting to anybody putting in any EV charging equipment. So this allows it. There's still some limitations or budget reasons or other reasons, or if they say there's a shortage of parking, they can deny the ability, but this did ease that significantly. Two things that they were not particular progress on was modifying Empower as in accordance with the recommendations that the commission had made, or modifying the state's EV purchasing incentive. There were no changes on that. Any comment there?
No, we'll talk more about Empower.
The next slide. Again, next slide. These are again some issues that were in the recommendations. These did not come from the Maryland Mitigation Working Group, so I know less about the recommendations than I do about the ones from MWG. But the first was on flood insurance. there was University of Maryland report is due on private and public flood insurance programs and recommendations on efforts to mitigate the risk. That's obviously dealing with how we deal with rising flood levels. And there was also a requirement that for small developers of real property, a disclosure before the contract is signed of flood risk, including any history of flooding at a location. A bill that did not get a vote in committee was on declaring a climate education month. And I think you had some comments on what happened there.
Yeah, I testified, Jared and I were there, and along with Jabari Walker, Eco Committee, and had a good hearing, but we are just moving forward. It's actually a kind of a humorous experience because you're there with about 20 other commemorative groups, and I mean, it goes on and on that, it's, so if you can rise above the noise, and we've been there year after year with all these great reasons to have a climate education month in Maryland, and we're amongst 50 other people talking about their great issue. So I'm happy to talk to ECO if that's the right place, or, Madam Secretary, if you want to have some conversations. I think if it's going to become a recommendation of the commission again, we need a different strategy.
Or a shark.
Pardon?
Or a shark.
Or a shark. Amen.
A fossil shark, right?
It's so
or a cake, or I mean, ugh.
It really is important. I mean, we continue to celebrate it. Right. So, but it would be so easy if we could get this done. Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question? Is it that it doesn't rise above the fray, or is there opposition? Is there real opposition to that?
Not really.
The opposition is to how many of these do we need to pass? So it's not ours. It is rising above the fray. You also are in front of a committee that doesn't really deal with the environment. And so there's a real education beat that has to get made there. And as Jennifer said, we're up against the fossilized, what was it,
Megalodon.
megalodon
Yeah.
bill. And, they're passing around shark's teeth.
Wow.
It's an experience. So I think there's better ways to go about it. And I guess the other question is, do we need it? But that's a different topic.
I think there is a question about how much political capital you spend on this versus other.
Right.
We have the governor, Jared, help me out. The governor gave a proclamation
Yes.
3 years.
3 years.
3 years in a row for Climate Education Month. And then the agency does things. I know our organization does things. And so, if the General Assembly doesn't want to acknowledge it,
It's not that it's not a good idea, but at some point you have to decide, is it taken away from other stuff? And I don't know the answer to that, but that's the debate.
It does make you wonder, picking our battles, right? Is it really preventing anything? And do we want to continue to fight when we do have a backup plan where the governor does issue the proclamation like you said, for the last 3 years? So.
Jabari's
We have
here.
hands from
Okay.
Jabari, our Eco co-chair, and also Delegate Stein.
Okay.
Jabari?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Kim stated, thank you, by the way, Kim, for your support and being there in person for this bill. And as you stated, I'm not sure if you actually said in detail, or can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. I think the statement was that this was presented as a commemorative bill, and the statement was there are too many commemorative bills. And I think that this is our second time, we tried this. The first time it was not presented as a commemorative bill. And it actually did pass the House. It kind of got stalled in the Senate during the Key Bridge collapse. So that could be possibly the reason, the way it was presented this time. However, we have been talking about this in our ECO group. We did, at this point, we're saying we probably are not looking to pursue this again because we've done this, already multiple times. But I just want to let you all know that was the reason that was presented to us. There was too many commemorative bills. And therefore, this is just one of another bill, trying to proclaim a month or a certain week as something. And that's the reason why it did not make it to the House this time. So I just want to put that out there. That's all.
Delegate Stein.
Oh,
Yeah, just to reiterate what's been said before, it's just hard. It's hard to get a commemorative bill passed. There's so much competition. It seems like the amount of competition grows each year. So I just, it's not to take away from the merits or value of it. It's just there are lots of considerations in getting in the 2 or 3 that get approved every year, and it's hard. So, but I certainly appreciate the effort that's put into it.
thank you for that.
Okay. On to the next slide. Now what we're going to do is go over some climate legislation that passed, starting with provisions in the Relief Act that weren't tied to any particular recommendations of the commission, but nevertheless were positive steps for climate. The first, and some of these Dana's already mentioned, it definitely will ease the way for rooftop solar. It limits the ability of local jurisdictions to place large fees on it or to have delays. Local jurisdictions and utilities have to approve a new rooftop solar in 5 days, cannot charge more than $500 for a permit fee. So it will make it much easier. Now, of course, this is against the backdrop of changes in federal incentives, but at least this will be streamlining permitting of rooftop solar. We also are only the third state in the country to allow these portable solar energy generating systems that are sometimes called balcony solar, because if you go to Europe, you'll see them hanging on balconies everywhere. There's a typo here. I think it's 1,200 watts, not 12,000 watts. But it's will allow people just to buy these and plug them in. Only requirement is to let the utility know that you're plugging them in, since they provide power into the system. So you can no longer totally isolate the house by turning off the main meter. But it's will not require the approval of the utility or localities to have this. So I think that's significant because we are only the third state to do that. Community solar, and Kelly or Kim, if either of you have comments on these, feel free. Community solar, there was net metering. The easiest way to explain this, it's not entirely accurate, but community solar systems get paid a retail price rather than a wholesale price for the power they provide to the grid. And there was a limitation on how much power they could get and qualify for this basically higher compensation. The number was doubled for how much they can sell into the grid. However, there is a process also set up in it for the PSC to look at that pricing structure, with the presumption being that they may lower how much net metering payments community solar will get in the future. So within the community solar industry, there's a lot of concern that this may be a short-term victory and could be a significant problem longer term, but only time will tell on that. Balcony solar, I think we've already referred to. Nuclear, there had previously in the Next Generation Act, the General Assembly had approved a system of non-bypassable surcharge to help finance nuclear expansion in the state. That would include both Calvert Cliffs and small nuclear reactors, small modular reactors, SMRs, in the state. The legislature tweaked that a bit and said that not only could that non-bypassable surcharge pay for the cost of the new nuclear, but even if there was up to a 15% cost overrun of the estimate, that could be included. On data centers, there's a lot of concern, and I represent a number of data centers. There's a lot of concern that a lot of data centers are being proposed and maybe not all of them are going to be built. I'm personally of the belief that we're not going to build all of the ones that are being proposed. But the concern is, are we trying to build an infrastructure big enough to handle data centers that may not occur? So added to the bill was a requirement that anyone getting an interconnection for a large load customer, a data center, had to register the project and identify any similar projects in this state or another state, the completion of which might impact whether this data center was built. So it's an attempt, I believe, to try to get a better estimate of how many data centers will actually be built. And then finally on a transmission.
Well, and Mike, the other good thing about the data center provisions that were put in there is there's an incentive for bringing clean energy. So it's not required, but if a data center is going to use renewable sources of energy, that there were some provisions that incentivize that. So that was good.
That's a good point. It's a tier system. There's a gold tier and a platinum tier. And to be, when you, Kelly, you know this better than I do. If you qualify for that tier based upon providing new energy and being clean energy, you get to go to the front of the line in terms of permitting and can get some greater certainty about permitting and deadline. So it's the carrot rather than the stick on data centers. I do think that probably will be very effective because I can tell you from representing these data centers, speed is their major issue. It's how fast can I get it built? They're all in a race with each other. Then lastly, on transmission, it added for procurement for the 1,600 megawatts of transmission storage. Kelly, did you want to comment on that?
No,
Okay.
you got this.
Okay. And of course, that has got potentially, as has been said, benefits both in terms of climate and affordability. But those were major provisions of HB 1532.
Yeah, going back to how Mike opened this up, it was a bill about affordability, period. And many of us in the room and on the screens spent a lot of time trying to interject the good environmental climate initiatives into the bill, and the legislature was pretty open to it. And I think as a result, it ended up being a decent bill. There's things I don't like about it, but we'll talk about that shortly.
Before you say too much about that, we have a hand up from Delia Stein.
Thanks. Just one other point I want to add about transmission. It also requires that applicants for new lines, or I think those that operate existing lines every 5 years, indicate how they're using advanced transmission technologies, which improve, I forget what the percentage is, but it's a non-material percentage in which efficiency can be improved in the transmission of power on these lines, which is only, a good thing when it comes to climate. So that's another component of the bill, which I think is worth noting.
That's a very good point. And there is a lot of other stuff about transmission as well. Again, 432-page bill. If you want to know more, I'm happy to provide it. But Dana's exactly right. That's an important part of the bill that was added. Yeah, Dave.
Question on the net metering piece. Is that specific only to the community solar scale, or is that also for, is there
It was
potential
for
that
community solar.
rooftop? So rooftop will be
No, wait,
reduced.
no. You're talking about rooftop. I think rooftop also was in that category.
So in the future,
Yeah, it's both.
the net
yes.
metering benefits for residential rooftop solar could be reduced.
Yes,
Yes.
but it's going forward. There's a grandfather.
Right, for the just.
Yeah,
What?
there's a grandfather.
Grandfathering. Oh, okay.
Grandfathering, it's very
So just to change
complex.
existing net metering.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreements.
The grandfathering, if you've not yet built, the grandfathering for whether you qualify for a project it's very complex. One of my partners got this like 5 pages of description of how you decide whether a project which is not yet in service qualifies for grandfathering or not. And now there's this, we're going to see a huge increase, I think, in community solar because everybody's trying to get into that grandfathering. Since we don't know what's going to happen in it, but it's potentially a significant negative for community solar in this state if the PSC ultimately reduces those net metering charges, right? Because it's,
Yeah, the community's really worried about that.
I think they're absolutely right to, and it would affect top solar too. Okay, next slide. Now we're going to talk about what did not pass. Okay.
Before you go there, so one of the things that did pass was GREEN, which is the $5 million green bank that small nonprofits and faith organizations have access to. But my understanding is that the money for that doesn't show up for another year. So having heard Kelly said that they're looking to deploy, I'm wondering if there's any way that we can speed up that piece of it so that we can deploy more capital, because the $5 million in the green bank is money we get back. So if we deploy it earlier, is that something that can help you out in what you're trying to accomplish?
It's something we'd definitely look into. Get back to you.
Okay, bills that stalled, and there were huge numbers of bills introduced, so this is not an attempt to be an exhaustive list of climate bills that failed, but I'll go through at least these. The first was the study on the cap and invest. I don't believe that any of these actually even got a committee vote, any of them on this list, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they all died in committee. This was one that would have called for a study on designing and implementing the economy cap and invest. It did not go anywhere. Secondly, we talked a bit about, and I don't know, Kim, you've already talked a bit about the bill on
Right.
did you want to add anything?
No. That was the second bullet. There was a Delegate Stein who talked about.
And then, Dana, did you want to comment at all on that bullet? Because I know it was your bill.
You mean the seat bill about 365 million annually?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly pushed hard for it, and I thank LCV for all their advocacy. And even though it didn't pass, it's been noted, we do have a fair amount of funding for climate and clean energy initiatives in this year's budget, and hopefully at least there's an education process that came about as a result of lots of advocacy for the bill. So, I think there is a silver lining, from this process.
Thank you. The Transportation and Climate Alignment Act, what that would have done is for highway projects that are more than 100 million. And that's actually a lot of projects because it defined the included planning and acquisition of property and so forth now toward the 100 million, would have to estimate the greenhouse gas emissions that would result from the highway project and offset those increased emissions through other efforts. Could be bike lanes or could be some other issue, but to try to reduce greenhouse gases in another way to offset the others. Again, it did not get a committee vote. The next one is a bill that would have authorized.
It passed the House and didn't.
Pass the House?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it didn't get out of this.
Okay, my
Can I ask a question on that one?
Yeah.
Have I can't remember, and I should because I've been around it long enough, but have we as the commission recommended that particular piece of legislation?
I don't believe so.
Okay. That might be, I would be curious how the WG feels about that for us for consideration this year. Because it's 2 years in a row, I believe now that it has made it through full chamber and stalled out in literally the last couple of hours on the other side. So I would love to hear from the MWG in the coming meetings about that one. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. The next one is a bill that would have authorized the Attorney General to investigate and prosecute. This is civil and criminal, but I think it really was intended to set up something like a super fund kind of program for climate. It did not pass. We already referenced the Maryland Climate Education Month didn't pass. And then the last one on this list was the Cherish Act, which dealt with cumulative impacts in a number of underserved and overburdened communities. And despite what I consider to be heroic efforts by Jeremy Baker, it did not pass. And I don't think that got a committee vote either on either House or Senate side. Do you have any comments on those?
Painful. Same thing, painful.
Next slide.
Well, actually, on the chair's bill, just to make a fine point, the president of the Senate, the speaker of the House, the governor all supported it. And there was $1.2 million in the budget for it. And we couldn't get it through.
We found money in the agency, of course, to help it get through the finish line, and it still did.
I don't think you want me to comment since I was on the other side of that one.
Nope. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, again, bills that passed, we established an on-farm organics diversion and recycling grant program. There was a new PSC approval deadline for community solar projects that we had basically an agrivoltaic systems, so speeding up the processing there. A bill that would require local jurisdictions in doing their comprehensive plans to include resilience and ecology. A change to the Maryland tree program to focus not merely on planting of native trees, but maintenance of existing systems and community participation in them. And then a bill prioritizing State Highway Administration funding on sidewalks and bicycle pathways. Next slide. So these bills will give you a sense, they're small bills, but there were a lot of them that did get passed. This is a bill from Chairman Corman. It required local governments to notify Department of the Environment within 10 business days of any building that would fit the definition of covered building. That is the buildings that are subject to BEPS. So it's merely a notification requirement, but that did pass. A bill requiring replanting of trees and clearing sites for DNR licensing approval. It also required requires the person who's doing the replanting of trees to have a license of certification. A bill establishing a resilience through restoration capital grant fund was passed. And a bill, I think we already made reference to this, about disclosing of flood risk. That's what I have as bills that passed that really impacted the climate. Anything else?
No, I don't know if, other folks have bills that they've been tracking that, but
Online.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and.
What'd you say?
Delegate Hidalgo, DFH had a bill called, we called it the Solar App Bill. I don't remember the name of the bill, but it basically asked the counties to use the online solar app program to accelerate permitting for solar projects. Gave them a couple of exemptions, like if you can get out there and inspect it. It's a completely automated thing that came out of DOE. If you can get out and inspect it within 5 days, then you don't have to use the online registration, but otherwise you have to use that.
It passed.
And it gave some teeth. It was a bill that already, it already existed, but there were no teeth to it. It gave a little teeth through the state to be able to penalize any delayed registration or permitting.
It was part of those provisions that also limited them to making approvals within 5 days and limiting them to $500 in permit fees. Some counties were not particularly enthusiastic about rooftop solar.
Almost every county.
Yeah. And so just like we had the fight on community solar to try to keep localities from forbidding community solar, I think this will greatly ease rooftop solar. But I think that the sum is that there were a lot of small bills that made some progress. There were some provisions in 1532 that I think are significant, but I don't think this is a year where you're going to look back and say we made a lot of progress on climate bills. And I think it really comes down to affordability in the energy crisis and the deficit. And the only thing I can say is I'm not optimistic that next year we won't have very similar concerns. There will be again a deficit problem. It looks like we're going to have definitely continued energy problems with it. So I think the hurdles are going to remain.
Thank you for that. Dana, then you, okay? He was up first.
Thanks. Just one, a fairly discrete bill, but nonetheless helpful on sequestration that passed. Chair Feldman had a bill that will require MDE to establish regulations for certain types of sequestration projects, biochar and wood vault technologies in particular. I mean, I don't think there's widespread interest at this point, but in that particular technology, but there is some interest and conceivably it might expand. So that bill did pass.
Good point. And thank you for pointing that out, Dana. I had not included that.
David?
Yeah. I would flag a couple other bills that stalled. I forget their numbers, but there were a few tax related bills that were introduced in, I believe, just one chamber, I believe in the House, trying to backfill the lost federal tax credits related to energy efficiency. And those, I don't know if they made any traction. I wasn't able to listen to the hearings, but there were ideas proposed that I don't think were raised up in priority in different ways, but an example of continued attempts to try and backfill some of the lost federal pieces there. I'll look them up, Jared, and share them with you soon. You guys have the records of the numbers there. I think the other thing if now is the right time to move away from bills that stalled or whatever, I am curious if folks are interested in having a conversation at the commission level about the back rolling on power. We touched on it. I don't think to me, that could be an entire 2-hour meeting for us on itself. So I'd like to hear a little bit from folks about how we're feeling moving forward with it, some next steps, and maybe a little bit of lessons learned. I understand the spotlight on it as it is a visible surcharge on bills, and it is one of the ways that the state can relatively immediately reduce consumer costs. But we've been talking about Empower since its inception, and at this commission, it has been highlighted since 2015 as the premier climate program that we have in the state. And it has an over 2-to-1 return on investment. And so when we're talking about affordability and how we can actually be achieving our goals in a cost-effective way, it has the track record beyond any other program that we have in the state. And so for us to lose that, not entirely, but I did continue to hear about it as a short-term pause and roll back on some of the goals. This is a decade-long pushback on the targets that we had in Empower, and it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, of investment that we're not putting into our building sector in particular, not exclusively. And so I'm concerned with the rollback of this on how it impacts not only affordability across the state, because there are reports and studies out there now that were highlighted during session, but continue to come out that we're actually going to see cost increases associated with this in the hundreds of millions of dollars. We're in a supply crunch. How we can deploy efficiency solutions is faster than supply, building new gas plants that we were trying to do last year. And I'm really concerned this is going to really harm, if I will focus specifically on our climate goals, it could harm us in how we're going to achieve them. So I'd like to have some discussion around how we can be better talking about energy efficiency, how we can be talking about how it saves people money, how we can deploy it quickly. And yeah, I'm looking forward how we can really gear up, I guess, some of our efficiency work. Yeah. One thing, I'll give you all a shout out, the 72 million for heat pumps. That'll get me excited every day of the week. So that's a piece to help us. I'm concerned about that one. I just love to have an open conversation.
I just want to give some background for those who may not know all the details we were talking about. In order to lower empowerment charges or charges on your bill for a period of time, the General Assembly made changes in the greenhouse gas reduction targets of Empower. The existing law had said that utilities would use the Empower funds and could raise sufficient power funds to reduce greenhouse gases by 2.5% per year. The General Assembly lowered that number to 1.75% this year before slowly ramping up. I think it's
over 9.
Well, it's actually currently
2.25%,
2.25%, and it's supposed to go up to 2.5%
Over 3 years.
So instead of going up to 2.5, it went back down to 1.75, and then for several years,
9.
several years, and then slowly inch its way back up. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting back to our climate saving targets that are in place, well, would have been in place for the next 3-year cycle in 2036.
And it also allows
Yes.
up to 20% of the reductions to be achieved through community solar rather than through efficiency improvements.
Yeah. So I would be curious a little bit if there were other, I recognize the hands are tied to a certain degree for how to provide immediate utility relief for folks. I am supportive of that. That's necessary. We had proposal last year, and there was again passage this year for direct bill rebates for folks. Obviously it's not a huge amount, but it's there. We could have continued doing that. There are a couple other programs that I think could have provided some immediate utility relief for folks, but Empower was the one that was selected. And so I'm curious, just like, again, looking forward, it's there, it's most likely to get signed into law. What are the ways that we can talk about energy efficiency as a commission better so that, we don't see continued rollback on things that have that return on investment?
Can I ask like a really stupid Johnny come lately question?
Go on.
Allow.
Okay, so I'm glad that that generated this reaction. So if something that we're doing is generating ROI, right? Why in the world would I stop doing it, roll it back? I could think of, well, maybe there's something else that produces more ROI where I could put that, but I didn't hear anyone say that. So I'm curious as to what's the rationale for rolling back something that is making money.
On your bill, I'm sorry, I just have to, this drives me insane. On your bill, there is a line item that says Empower costs you this much money. Right. That bill has been showing increasing amounts of dollars until the average is about $10 of a surcharge on your bill. Nowhere on your bill does it say Empower saves you this much money. Why can't we, if it's within the realm of this commission, why can't we make a recommendation that there be a simple line item that says you're winning this much back? All of the programs are cost effective in bulk across the, so that, I'm sorry, but if the legislature is in an election year and there's a line item that says your bill is this much more than it was last year because of these energy efficiency programs, it's a target. Like why, that's why that happened. And there was no answer that was visible.
Are we talking about?
Sorry, I get heated with
No, I see. I like the passion. Are we speaking about in the future? Because this decision is made.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so going forward, we need to do a better job.
For next year's legislation.
Okay.
Put a line item, make utilities put a line item on their bill that says you have.
Yeah, I mean, that works on the PR front, but that doesn't change.
Fair.
I love it. I love it because, and wouldn't it be an interesting conversation to say, how did it get on the bill that way? And anyway, that's for a different time. But I applaud your point, David. I think it's spot on. And I'm wondering if there isn't room to have conversations about actual changes. I mean, it gutted. It was, it gutted that program. And was painful. That's the word for the day.
I'll give you my answer. And I was on behalf of Washington Gas defending Empower, trying to stop these cuts, right? The truth is there is very little that the General Assembly could do in the short term to reduce rates. Power is one that reduces it longer term or midterm, and generation clearly reduces it midterm and long term. But what you can do in the next 2 to 3 years, about the only thing you could do politically was cut the surcharges on the bill. And I think that was what the fight was. It was, if they had to find something to cut the bills this year, next year, and the year after, the only real lever was Empower.
That was immediately understood by the general public. I agree. And I do think there's more than one conversation to be had, but making it vulnerable to people who don't look at like what programs there are, like, I think was a mistake.
100%.
Okay, we're running out of time. Okay, Delegate Stein.
Sorry to keep raising my hand, but I do have to weigh in on this. What Mike Powell said is correct. This was a clear and immediate way to reduce utility bills. I support Empower as much as anyone, but I think there are a few challenges with it. First, not too many people outside of this space understand what Empower does. In terms of the benefits. Number two, the benefits, as we all know, are focused on those who avail themselves of programs that are funded by, so it's not a broad-based, every year benefit to the public. And thirdly, I think there's very little understanding of the fact that by reducing demand, you're reducing rates. It's that issue, I think, with respect to Empower, didn't come up very much. So I think moving forward, being more clear about the socialize, maybe that's not the right word to use, but the general benefit of power demand reductions is important. Anyway.
Yep. Thank you. Gordon.
So I think what Delegate Stein just pointed out is really important, that people don't understand the impact of reducing the peak. I'm wondering if without legislation, whether the agencies could devise a communications campaign to help the public understand that without us having to go with a new bill. Is there, if you found money within a budget for climate justice that didn't get passed, could that money be deployed to explaining to people the benefits of Empower for saving money on their bill?
So we wouldn't be able to divert that money. You mean the money for Cherish?
Right.
No, that money was for permits. They were, it was just moving people around and changing, just moving pins. It wasn't real money. It's money, but positions. So,
I can tell you that the utilities and the contractors spent a considerable amount of money on outreach, trying to get that message out. And it just did not weigh out the idea that they could reduce the surcharge on those bills, right? I mean, understand, Washington Gas is having to lay off a bunch of people because of this, and the contractors who do them are going to be laid off. Compare that to the belief that we've got to reduce rates now, and it just outweighed it.
all right. We're going to actually have to move on unless we have one more question. But I don't see
Maybe I'll
it.
just suggest what would be open to the commission, if commissioners have appetite to continue this beyond the discussion that we need to close. That MWG is available to you. I think jurisdictionally, it would be the working group to consider a topic like this. The co-chairs are here at the table, so the commission could potentially direct the topic that way.
Maybe.
Maybe, okay.
We'll organize I'm looking at Mark. Okay,
Okay.
my boss, Mark,
He's everywhere.
that works, right?
All right. Well, okay, well, I think we're gonna move on. Is that all right, everyone? Thank you for the presentation. We really appreciate it. That was a great conversation, more to think about. And now we have one more presentation. This is the last one where we're gonna go over the process for the commission, commissioners and the working groups, the process for actually submitting those recommendations to the commission to consider. We did it last year. We're going to talk about it again now. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So this will be a presentation about how we're going to manage the recommendations process this year. It should sound familiar because the short version of this is that we're going to use the same process as last year. Last year, as everyone will recall, we implemented a new process to try to keep things manageable. It seemed to get some pretty good results. We had a lot more time to discuss things, and we were all out of here and done in November instead of December. So that was pretty good. This is largely the same as last year. So this is all a refresher for everybody. We will be asking, we have a Google form that will be used to submit recommendations for the commission to consider. We are once again asking the working groups to submit no more than 4 per year for this year. Individual commissioners are of course welcome to put actions before the commission. We are encouraging individual commissioners who may want to consider a recommendation early in the process. Please submit those by June 1st through this form. What that will get you as a commissioner is a guarantee that that will be routed to the relevant working group so they can discuss it, chew on it. It'll go on their agenda as they're considering the recommendations that their members are bringing forward. And the outcome of that process can then inform your recommendation when the commission brings things up later on. So we will refresh everyone with the link to this Google form. And again, ask individual commissioners, we strongly encourage you to, by June 1st, submit a concept, and then the Commission Steering Committee will route that to the relevant working group. And the form will include all the information we need from you. Yes.
So an individual commissioner doesn't go into the work group's count of 4, correct?
Correct. Correct. Yes. The working groups don't have to feel like you're part of your budget's being taken up. Yeah.
So don't assume that they're going to go from 4 to 10 or 8 or something, right?
Yes. Yes, Jared.
Might also add that last year we had a recommendation from multiple commissioners that kind of went together jointly. We've included that in the Google form now so that if you have co-sponsors for your recommendation, you can note that.
Thank you. So next one, Jared. So the key information, again, is same as last year. We want to keep each recommendation to 2 to 3 sentences, fully spelled out acronyms. And we want each recommendation to clearly identify the state entity taking the action. As a reminder, the commission is advising the state, the governor, and the General Assembly specifically on actions to take. So we want each recommendation to be clear who is taking the action. Is this MDE issuing a regulation? Is this MDOT doing a study? Is this the General Assembly passing a bill, et cetera, et cetera? The form of that action should be a discrete state action, a bill, a regulation, research, and a deadline, a timeline. When should MDE do this thing? We are not requiring or expecting that cost estimates are included, but we encourage discussion of the budget context.
But
Yes,
on the
Brian.
last point though, so the commission recommendations that get routed to the working groups, they don't count towards that working group's budget of recommendations. So the decision to move forward from the working group back up to the commission to discuss later in the year, it's just an up or down vote. It's not part of this.
The working group, when the working group is considering the commissioner's recommendation, this is a good question. The outcome of that will be feedback back to that commissioner. We think your idea is a good idea. We think your idea is a terrible idea. We think here are some suggestions for you. We're not envisioning that the working groups have veto power over anything that an individual commissioner could bring before the commission. This is more to advise and improve upon commissioners' recommendations and to avoid a situation where a new topic is being brought at the end of the year that hasn't been discussed. Did that answer your question?
It's great.
It might be worth reminding people that the commission decided that recommendations made in a prior year continue to be live, that unless we modify or withdraw them, so they don't have to be repeated, they are still standing recommendations.
Good for that.
And so then the working groups are under a deadline of September 1st. And the chairs of the groups are keenly aware of this, to provide their recommendations forward to the commission to consider for the year. So September 1st, the working group chairs will be submitting recommendations from their working group. We are asking again the individual commissioners to submit earlier in June so that their recommendation can be part of the working group conversations leading up to September. So then once all of the working group recommendations are in, staff will then submit, compile and send those recommendations to you all within a week so that you have them for a couple of weeks before we all convene in September to begin discussing the commission's action on those. We are once again aiming for the November meeting to finalize the report for the year and all of the recommendations it contains.
Are we still with the 8 working group structure, or is that, did I hear that got back, or?
So, right, good question. So we, as a reminder, we went from 4 groups to 8, but those 4 newer ones all had discrete action items that were concluded last year. So while those 4 groups still exist, they are not actively meeting. So we are not expecting recommendations. 8 working groups, we're expecting recommendations from 4 working groups. Okay. Thanks very much. We're looking forward to having another good, smooth, productive process this fall.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very smooth,
And short.
shorter, efficient. So thank you all for that. I think now we can move to public comment.
We can. I have not seen any public comments online in the chat. And Jared, if you could bring it up to confirm. If there are any members of the public online who would like to offer a comment, please put your name in the chat and we'll add you to the list. Checking whether any members of the public have joined in the room here who would want to offer a comment. Okay, we have none in the room, and it looks like we have none online. Thank you to any members of the public who are tuning in and not commenting. With that,
All right, somebody. Oh. Okay. Go on. Yes, please.
I'd just like to announce that we are having a workshop for the Climate and Health Profile Report, which the Science and Technology and the WG, I can't remember what that stands for.
Adaptation and resilience.
Adaptation and Resilience Working Group. It's going to be on May 20th at School of Public Health, College Park. If anybody is interested, just let me know. I can forward you the invitation and the agenda. Excited.
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll add a programming note.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the next meeting is July 20th at 1 p.m. That's Monday, July 20th at 1. We're working with the steering committee to firm up that agenda. Some topics to expect are continued discussion of the financing question.
Yep.
Potentially updates on climate education, the climate teach-in during what is not in state law, but in our hearts, Climate Education Month. And potentially, Kim, there may be discussions of the comptroller's work on the cost of climate impacts in July, potentially at a different meeting.
We did a field trip a couple years ago. We went to go see Calvert Cliffs. If there's any interest in any other field trips, I'm happy to support that. Pardon? Particularly if it could show people the value of Empower.
Very nice. Okay.
Actually going to be in Rio in November.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end. Thank you all for being here. I thought we had a really good discussion. See you again July 20th. here in Montgomery Park. Hopefully all of you will come in person. I doubt it. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.